G'day everyone, welcome to the first sort of breakdown lesson. We're going to be looking at a couple of steps today, actually, a little bit out of sequence because I thought it will probably help you when you look at your topic selection if we combine it with this element of change over time and cultural difference. So we're going to be looking at those two today. So the main focus, of course, is our topic selection for this assessment task. I'll just zoom in on all of that to make it a bit bigger. And then this bit here as well. So the first thing you want to do when you are selecting a topic is to pick something that you are passionate about, something that you are personally interested in. Because if you do not, you're going to be spending 7 weeks pursuing something that either doesn't engage you, might bore you, or you're just not that interested in. So it's really important and vital in order to keep your own engagement and interest in this, that you pick something that is meaningful to you, that interests you, or that you have some kind of connection to, because that will sustain your interest over time. That'll make sure that you're putting in, or you're more likely to put in more effort if it's something that you're interested in, and it will sustain, hopefully, a productive work ethic over the period of 7 weeks in which you'll be working on this. So with that being said, again, when you're choosing a contemporary issue, it has to be any current or modern issue that is currently affecting a significant amount of people at micro, meso, and macro levels and remains either unresolved or highly controversial in nature. Okay, so again, we have our list of examples here, but there are other ones that you can choose too. If you want to look at something like an eating disorder, for example, that's a contemporary issue. Like if you want to look at the romanticization of true crime or something like that, that's a contemporary issue, right? So it just has to be affecting a significant amount of people. It has to be a current or modern. It does not have to relate to this, although it can. Okay, so in terms of how to choose your topic, that's all there is to it. So you can use the internet to help find some different contemporary issues. You can look at the current media cycle is another suggestion or idea. So you might want to go to the front page of the ABC or the Guardian. I might do it now. So I've just gone to the Guardian. I'm just going to have a quick scroll through. Obviously it's Anzac Day at the time of filming, so there's a lot of that sort of stuff happening. But if I look here, there's something about someone leaving the news empire funded by Rupert Murdoch. So you can talk about media censorship there. That's an idea. There's talk about reproductive rights here. North Dakota governor signs laws banning nearly all abortions. Okay, so if you're looking at something as abortion as a topic, you could examine that. Let's keep scrolling. One thing that you want to make sure is it's a society culture, right? So if we were to look at something like housing prices or renting prices, although it is a contemporary issue, it's not really society and culture in its makeup. So you want to steer clear of that sort of thing as well. Here's an opinion piece about ADHD. You could look at that as sort of a contemporary issue in that a lot of people typically are self-diagnosing today. You could look at that as a contemporary issue in itself, the self-diagnosis of mental illness and the impacts that has. You probably want to pick a particular one. But like I said, you can just scroll through any sort of main newspaper article, get some ideas, write some ideas down on a Google Doc or something, and go from there. So that might be something that you want to do. Although typically a lot of these ideas that I've suggested here have a lot of research backing them, so it might be a good way to stick to that if you like. So you need to choose a topic. Once you've chosen a topic, this is where I want you to refer to lesson 4. Okay, and point 4. This is change over time and cultural difference. It's really important that when you're selecting your topic, you keep in mind what these two things could be, because you want to make sure that when you choose your topic, it's going to be able to combine with these elements that you have to talk about in your PIP. So the change over time and cultural difference component. So change over time is one that is fairly straightforward. to look at. You're almost just looking at how it's changed over time, the nature of your contemporary issue. So let's say, for example, you're looking at, again, let's just say gender workplace quotas, for example. Was that something that was pursued 20, 30 years ago? Maybe it wasn't, and the lack of it can almost sometimes speak to the extent of a contemporary issue if people weren't even aware of it. But you could look at what were gender workplace quotas, in the 1980s versus what are they now in 2020? What are the beliefs and values and opinions behind that? The other thing, again, is to combine cultural difference to your topic as well. So if you were to look at, say, something around Aboriginal exclusion, it would probably make sense to base the cultural difference of Aboriginal persons versus non-Aboriginal persons, and looking at the contemporary issue in that sort of realm. So let's say if you wanted to hone that down and look at the justice system for Aboriginal people, and the fact that I spoke in the last video just very briefly that they're more likely to go to jail, 10 times more likely, despite being only 3% of the population. You might want to compare that to the non-Aboriginal or non-Indigenous, non-First Nations statistics and data. So that cross-cultural or cultural difference perspective will be based off ethnicity. So examining that as you go. So once you've sort of got a topic and an idea down, it's not like you necessarily have to come up with an overarching question. You can if you want, but you don't have to. So I'm just going to go through some past research papers that sort of have or give you an idea of, I guess, a topic title, so to speak, to help you stay on track. Now again, the most important thing in your research project is not getting a killer title or a killer punchline or a killer question. You're sort of exploring the contemporary issue within your writing itself, okay? But if it helps to have a good guide, you can do that. So here are just some ideas on how you can frame a topic choice. Now these are not specifically research reports related to the current assignment that we are doing. These are just example of research reports from past students in general. And the idea here is that just to show you or visualize to you guys what some topics could potentially look like. Now most of these could almost be related and linked to a contemporary issue in of themselves, but here we can see something looking at casual racism in Australia towards Middle Eastern ethnicity and its impacts and implications. So if we were to reframe that in our assignment lens, which I'll do here, this can be almost under that banner, I guess, of Islamophobia to some extent. So the contemporary issue here is looking at casual racism, okay? So that's, I guess, here, that's a contemporary issue that affects Australia, okay? So you might add casual racism there as an example. We're looking at it in Australia. That's another important aspect I want to stress, is that whatever contemporary issue you guys are looking at, can we please look at Australia? We're not going to, so say for example, if a lot of you want to look at abortion laws and how it's all changing in America, we're sticking to Australia, okay? You could certainly use America as a cross-cultural comparison if you want to look at a different country and compare Australia to America, but most of this should be relating to Australia because it makes sense, because your questionnaire data, your interview data is going to be relating to that. That does not mean that you can't use data or statistics if they're generated from a researcher in another country, for example. However, we're not going to be basing our entire contemporary issue and research report on something in another country, unless it's part of our cross-cultural comparison, in which it will only make up a portion of it. Okay, so I just want to be clear on that. So casual racism in Australia towards Middle Eastern ethnicity. So that's our, if we're looking at our cultural difference, this person has looked at ethnicity. So they've picked their topic, casual racism being their contemporary issue, and then they've linked it to their cultural difference being ethnicity. They're going to look at Middle Eastern people and compare casual racism towards them and non-Middle Eastern people, for example. Okay. And then obviously looking at how those perspectives, beliefs and opinions have changed over time, you know, what sort of events may have led up to the increased casual racism of Middle Eastern ethnicity in Australia. If we look at another one, let's say this one. See, so this has sort of got a title page. You can sort of see a few title pages here as well, but this one's looking at the increased hypersexualization of adolescents. Okay, so if we were to look at a contemporary issue, we might write hypersexualization as a contemporary issue. So hypersexualization is this idea that within our media discourse, in Australia, on things like social media, TV shows, etc., we're exposed to a lot of sexualization, but the idea that hypersexualization means it's over the top. We see it a lot. So this person's looking at hypersexualization, but they're looking at it under the lens and narrowing it down of adolescents, so young people. Okay, so that's their topic, hypersexualization of young people. And then their cross-cultural difference could be a lot of things. Gender would make a lot of sense. Are we hypersexualizing just young girls, or are we hypersexualizing young boys as well? What are the differences there? Do we only hypersexualize heterosexual people, or do we hypersexualize homosexual or bisexual people? So you can look at it under the sexuality lens. Do we hypersexualize religion and non-religious things? Do we hypersexualize only the upper class, not the lower class? So you can look at it under different lenses. Typically there's probably going to be a cultural difference lens that suits the topic better, and that's important to consider as well, that you choose something that works. So for me, I think gender probably works the best in this. Ethnicity could probably work really well as well. We're hypersexualizing certain ethnicities and not others, or more so than others. Could be an interesting thing to explore. So you can almost see how your cultural difference might link up with this as well. I'll just do one more for example. We'll look at this one because it's got a funny picture. So this one's looking at the conformity of boys club mantras and toxic masculinity within contact sport. So the contemporary issue here might be toxic masculinity, for argument's sake. And then our cultural difference here could be looking at gender, so we could look at male and female, or it could look at something that's not listed here. Because this one's looking at sport, you could look at different sporting codes. Is it, let's say, in swimming versus tennis, right? Just for argument's sake. Is there toxic masculinity differences within that as a mantra? If we look at ethnicity, are white Anglo-Saxon people more likely to embark toxic masculinity traits than other cultures? So you can look at that as an aspect as well, but that's the overarching contemporary issue, and then you're looking at it under the lens of that, and then obviously looking at how has it changed over time, what are the perspectives and attitudes of that. So if we're looking at toxic masculinity, for example, in contemporary society, there's a lot more awareness around it. There's a growing and increasing belief that it's considered immoral or a wrong thing to do within Western culture now. So you can see how that's changed over time as well. So I hope running through that and brainstorming and thinking that out loud has given you guys a bit more of a platform on how to choose a topic. Again, if you're not sure on where to take it, feel free to email me, but I would like it if you guys could brainstorm some of your topics with your peers around you, because you guys have really good ideas. It's also probably a good idea to ask your parents and get other people's, point of views on what they think about this as a potential topic, and then if you're still not sure, you can ask me and let me know. But yeah, hope that helped. That's choosing a topic and linking it to change over time and cultural difference.